Hey guys, Milwaukee just released their new M18 2-gallon air compressor. We're going to go through a ton of different tests on this unit to show you what it's capable of and let you decide if it'll work for you. Stay tuned. Milwaukee designed their new M18 FUEL brushless compressor in a nice way. It will sit fairly flat, which will allow you to put this on top of a pack out, not lock it in, but just sit it there. These 4 feet will sort of keep it in place if you were rolling something around. This is model number 2840-20. It does weigh about 32 pounds without the battery. You can run whatever battery you'd like to in this. Obviously, it's probably going to be something from 5.0 or up. We're going to run some tests on that in a little bit to let you know what this unit will do. Basically here you have a simple compressor, but let's come in and take a closer look at it. Milwaukee designed this unit to be easily carried one-handed. It has a nice roll cage that goes all the way around it. You can store it in this position up top, but it was designed to be run flat on the bottom with these rubber feet in the downward position. You have a tank drain that's on the bottom. And if we move over, you have your intake that's sitting right here. We'll go into this a little bit more in depth as to why it's a little bit more quiet with their design. You have the tank PSI, your pressure regulator for your hose. As we flip this around, you have a switch for on and off. You can fit any size battery you want to in this at the current moment. And we have a 1/4 inch QD over here and your emergency overpressure drain on this side. Very nicely set up unit that is going to work for most people, but what you need to know about this is it's 1.7 SCFM at 40 PSI and 1.2 SCFM at 90 PSI. You have 135 PSI max out the hose. Now that is a max number, not consistent. So let's really get into some testing and show you what this guy will do. So the first test we'll run is an initial pressurization. We'll go from 0 to 140 on this gauge, see how long that takes. Approximately 1 minute 49 seconds for the initial pump up. You can see the gauge says we're at 140. Now if we hook up the hose, this is a 50-foot hose. We pressurize it to 90. Just the amount of that hose brings our tank down to 110 PSI. We're gonna hook up We have a recovery time of about 28 seconds. So if we do that recovery test one more time, I'll just let this out until this starts, and then we'll check that again. That one was a recovery time of 32 to 33 seconds. So that's the range that you're going to be in. If you take a look here, this is the intake that Milwaukee has. There's an air filter that's inside, and then you have basically a tube that they send you that's on the outside. So when you put this guy together, air filter, intake closes, this little tube goes in. This is where some of the quiet comes from, because this is really the noisy part. Let's take a listen to it here as it turns back on. Removing this tube makes a pretty big difference in noise, and to talk about how quiet this makes it. So this is the muffler system that they really have going on, and this works, and this is the same in all air compressors. But if you're ever wondering what this tube is here for, it actually quiets it down a little bit more. And if you had this on another smaller air compressor, this little tube could be inserted into most of them and quiet a lot of them down. So the tests that you watched were completed with a 12.0 amp hour battery. You can add about 5 to 10 seconds to those numbers if you drop to a 5 amp hour battery. And we really didn't see much of a change at all if you use the XC 6.0 or the heavy duty 9.0 amp hour battery. I don't think you want to drop down too much less than the 5 amp hour battery, because I think you'll start to get some heating up of the battery, and that will create this unit to either stop working because the battery overheats or the motor overheats on this. So there can be still cutouts on this unit where it will need to take a break and not work. With that said, there is a runtime change obviously between the 12 amp hour and anything less. Milwaukee claims 1,600 nails on a 12 amp hour battery and less than half of that on the 5, which is still very, very significant. But I want to talk about what sort of disappoints me a little bit about this air compressor. This is the first air compressor that I've ever had that does not have an output pressure gauge. So I can change my output here on this dial, but it doesn't really tell me what's actually happening out the hose, or when I pull the trigger on either a sprayer or an impact or anything like that, how much pressure is actually getting out there. That's important to me. So that was disappointing, because especially if you're running a sprayer, you want it to be, let's say 40 PSI or something outside, and you might have another PSI gauge before your sprayer or on it, but as soon as you pull that trigger, your output gauge is going to drop a little bit, so you're going to need to adjust up. And this dial is not overly accurate in the first place, so when you really look at where things set, it's just kind of close. So if you're using something that's precision, this might not be the compressor for you. But what I would like to show you quick, Milwaukee rates this in their instructions for medium to light duty automotive use. Everyone always asks, can I run an impact wrench off it? And this is only 2 gallons, so you have to really look at what you can do with 2 gallons. And I just want to show you here by just simply connecting up a very small impact wrench. And if we just run it, not actually impacting anything, just like using very little air, we'll see when this turns on. So just by doing that, I was already below 100 PSI, and I only had this set up for about 90 PSI going out. Impact wrench, even a small one, in my opinion, no. Someone will tell me I'm wrong, and that's up to you guys to go at it. That portion of this, really, the 2 gallon part, really limits what you're going to use this for. And I'm going to say that pumping up tires in a car is still going to be that same thing. If you're like bringing your car from 30 to 35 PSI, I could see it on a small car tire, you might be able to get away with this. If you're going to try to go from 70 to 80 on like an F250, F350, or a truck tire, that's going to take a long time, and I would highly recommend you getting an inflator for that rather than an air compressor. But I guess if you had to only pick one and you thought the air compressor is going to give you a little bit more, then be patient. You know, remember, this does have a duty cycle also, although it's not listed in the instructions. The computer system in this motor is just going to simply turn it off when you hit that duty cycle and say, okay, you need to let it cool down. Milwaukee does rate this on nails, and I think that their big thing with this unit is going to be more of the construction. Are you going to take this in and work inside a house with a nail gun? So realistically, let's pump this guy back up and then shoot a couple nails and see how many nails out of this 16 gauge nailer we can shoot before the compressor turns back on. Okay. Simple 16 gauge nailer here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 nails per every time this is going to cycle. It's typical of what we've seen on any 2 to 2.5 gallon tank. That gives you an idea of how much this is going to be running. And Milwaukee claims this at 68 decibels. This is sitting really close to me, really close to the microphone. So you're gonna probably hear it a little bit louder than it actually is. It just seems to happen that way. But it's really quiet between 0 and 60 PSI. When it's running the norm of what it'll always run, which would be between 100 and 140 PSI, it gets a little bit louder and it's quiet. It's definitely not the quietest air compressor that I've seen in my opinion, but it is fairly quiet and quieter than a lot of the other battery compressors that we have seen. So I think Milwaukee can actually say that it is more quiet than many other on the market, but there are going to be a lot of corded ones out there that are going to just blow this away as far as how quiet it is and realistically how fast it does pump up to its initial pressure and recover. So with that said, is this unit good for you? Look at the SCFMs. You know, it's basically going to be 1.2 at 90 PSI, 1.7 at 40 PSI. And that's going to run some small stuff. It's not going to run anything that's really large. Then look at what you need as far as battery. There is no AC connection to this, so you cannot connect it up and just plug it in. That would have been absolutely awesome to see this in a hybrid, because then a lot of the trim guys could have decided what they want. But with the runtime, they may not need it. You just need that extra battery. However it goes, guys, this is the information on this tool. I hope it helps you in your decision if this is worth the $349 they're asking. Bare tool. I'm very interested, as normal, in all the comments that you might have, so please leave them below. If you can, please give us a like in this video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks for your time, guys. Have a great day.